Thank you to everybody, especially those people I sprung on. That was a little surprise. I didn't let all of our partners know they were going to have to stand in front of you, so good work everybody, testing your guiding skills at this early stage of the morning. So we've got 5 minutes before we break for coffee and drinks, so if anybody has any questions for me or any of the other partners about the Responsible Whale Watch Partnership in particular, then fire away. Any questions? Yeah, Sam.
Are there countries that are on the radar that aren't doing things well, that stand out? Not to put the spotlight on anyone.
Okay, so the question is, are there countries where responsible whale watching is kind of falling a little bit behind? I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room who've got opinions on that. My own take is that, as you guys will know, there are parts of the world where whale watching has been pretty well established for a long period of time, and North America being a classic example, perhaps the classic example. But even here, many of you are aware of some of the issues, and there are lots of challenges to overcome. But on top of that, if we look particularly in Asia right now, in Southeast Asia, China, Sri Lanka, also in Africa, and to a lesser extent South America, whale and dolphin watching is developing at a phenomenal rate in some of these places, and it is either poorly managed or basically completely unmanaged. And many of you who've been working, in whale watching for a long time, you know how important it is right at the beginning to start to get things right, particularly when we talk about things like licensing and managing a number of boats in a particular area, working out what a carrying capacity is for a certain area, both for the animals and for your businesses. So all those things aren't happening, generally in these locations because it's a free-for-all. So we as responsible and experienced whale watch operators, largely in this room from the Western world, have an obligation, I think, and an opportunity too, to reach out to a lot of these places who would like and would massively benefit from our experiences. So it's a very complex political picture out there across the world, and one thing that we've talked about within the partnership over the last couple of years is, how can we have that wider impact, and how can we really try to benefit those people outside of the partnership who are trying to run businesses and learn and want to improve? Nick?
What sort of response, Kevin, have you had from government bodies with regards to the Responsible Whale Watching Partnership?
You can probably answer that question, Nick, as well as I can, because you're at the International Whaling Commission meeting. I guess it would be fair to say that responses from governments have been pretty limited currently outside of the IWC working group. What I would say is that where I think we've been able to be more influential is actually within the tourist industry itself. So you can call this governmental, but tourist boards, for example, are increasingly showing an interest in us. Large tour operators are increasingly coming to us and asking us questions about who they should be going with. How do they tell the good guys from the bad guys? Making it easy for us. This is something that we're going to cover off later this afternoon. But as you all know, there's a lot of connections between whale watching as an industry, science, government is an important player, conservation, the NGO sector, and how all those interlink. There's some wonderful models that work really well there. There are lots of examples of where things have been tried and gone wrong, frankly. So lots of work to do, but we do need to reach out with all of our partners, and the people can help us to run whale watching responsibly and effectively, and government is an important player. I think we do have somebody from NOAA here. Melissa, is Melissa here? Hey Melissa, good to see you. So we'll get Melissa's thoughts on this over the coming hours. Did you want to say anything about that at the moment, Melissa?
I guess I'm the only no person here. No, I mean, obviously the United States does pay attention to this issue, and we, as you know, because we've been at all the same meetings, we attended the 2012 conference, and then I work on the IWC work that Dylan referenced, and so the United States is a big player in the work that the IWC is doing on this issue. We chair industry, it depends on the country, and there's a lot of factors as to who pays attention and what's important to the managers of that country.
Thanks, Melissa. So for those on the live stream, this is just saying, for NOAA, whale watching is it's a really important element for the government and something they pay a lot of attention to. I think, to be brutally honest, we see around the world that the government and tourism industries' interest in whale watching depends on how influential whale watching is as a business, in the business sector. So we see particularly island communities, island nations often have tourism players and government players that are really interested in whale watching because it actually is significant for them. For other countries, like large mainland countries, it can be sometimes really difficult for whale watching businesses to be heard. Maybe easier if you're part of a global partnership. That's certainly one thing that some of our partners have found, that having that backing at least makes people sit up and take a little bit more notice. Let's take one more question and then we'll break for tea and coffee. Hi.
Hi, Stephanie Stefanski, representing one of these remote regions, Patagonia, Argentina today. So I wanted to ask, how do whale watching companies in the southern hemisphere that are remote with difficult access to the internet or communications, how are you working with your partners there and reaching out to those regions?
Yeah, sure. Anne, do you want to have a go at taking this on as one of our Latin American? I'll get you to come up if I can, Anne, and just maybe you can give your own take and I can pitch it. Anne's based in Panama, so.
I think there's so many, yes, I'm familiar with not having any internet or electricity. My husband's from a village in the middle of the jungle where we have none of those things. So connection can be difficult, but on the other hand, we also do have time. We generally do get somewhere where we can communicate. I think it's important that those of us in the regions, this is a great place right now to start those connections, build those connections so that we can keep that network alive and connect. As you know, I've already talked, I encourage everybody within regions while we're here to make those connections and then see how we can help each other and form those like committees and make those bonds so that we can address and identify the particular issues within each region and figure out a way and say, okay, on Sunday we're going to have a Skype meeting when we know we're both going to be connected. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add to that, and we're learning here, but we recognise that some of the places that I was talking about with Zach here, Asia, parts of Africa, to expect any of those businesses to come here to Massachusetts is obviously that's just impossible for them, and we have to think global and be global and look to find ways to really be inclusive as much as possible. Our way of doing that on our limited resources right here today is to at least have the live streaming through the internet, so hopefully those people online can access that. But I think we have to also deliver face to face. We have an obligation to make sure that this conference, for example, really does move around the world. I think it would make people feel pretty good about it if it went to Africa. I think it would be, we have to go to Latin America and to Asia and these places and say, look, we will come to your front door as well, give us the chance and we will come. Because we value your involvement as much as everybody else. So some challenges. We're delivering this conference in English. It would be an aspiration that we're looking to do that, using different language platforms as well. So look, we will get there.